I'm not wired up, I just realized.
Oh, do you have the
I do.
other thing?
Testing, testing. Are we live in the back? Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Marty from the School of Information, and I am just delighted to welcome you all here to this lecture by Dr. Youngmoo Kim from Drexel University. Many thank you to the College of Communication and Information for sponsoring this lecture, and many thanks to the university libraries for hosting us here in the beautiful Bradley Reading Room. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Youngmoo Kim. Youngmoo is hands down the most interdisciplinary scholar that I have ever met. With degrees in electrical engineering, vocal performance, and media arts from Swarthmore, Stanford, and MIT, Youngmoo has literally spent his career bridging science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, STEAM. As a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Drexel, he runs a research group called the Music and Entertainment Technology Laboratory, which pursues AI for music and sound, human-machine interfaces and robotics for expressive interaction, and K-12 outreach for STEAM and maker education. He himself has extensive experience in music performance. He sang in the Tanglewood Festival Chorus for 8 years, and he served as a resident technologist for Opera Philadelphia. Since 2013, Youngmoo has directed the Expressive and Creative Interaction Technologies Excite Center at Drexel University. His work there has been supported by the NSF, Knight Foundation, the NAM Foundation, among others. With funding from the Malcolm Jenkins Foundation, he created Young Dragons, a summer STEAM camp for middle school students in the West Philadelphia Promise Zone. He has received Drexel's highest award for distinguished teaching. He was named Philadelphia Scientist of the Year in 2012. And in 2018, he co-authored the seminal report on academic makerspaces, Making Culture, a national study of education makerspaces. Youngmoo was a member of the National Academies committee that produced the report Branches from the Same Tree on integrating the arts, humanities, science, engineering, and medicine in higher education. We have put handouts on the chairs, which has a very quick summary of the results of that report. And he also recently co-edited a special issue of the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences focusing on creativity and collaboration. His talk today will discuss that Branches from the Same Tree report and present exciting, no pun intended, transdisciplinary STEAM education and technology projects from Drexel's Excite Center. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming for his first time ever visit to Tallahassee, Florida, Dr. Youngmoo Kim.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay, thank you. I am now on. Wow, that makes it seem like I should know something. Thank you for that amazing introduction. And the one thing I've learned as I've pursued my career in academia is that the more I learn, the less I know. So there are things that I will throw out there today, and I don't claim to have many answers on things. I will try to raise maybe some interesting questions. So. Sorry, I'm going to play with the sound just a little bit. I am an audio engineer, after all. So first off, thank you to Florida State. Thank you for the College of Communications and Information. Thank you, Dean Larry Dennis. Thank you, Associate Dean Paul Marty, for inviting me. It's been a wonderful day. I've seen some wonderful things at your institution, including a really great basketball game last night. Now, in this talk, I am going to try to do something. I'm going to try to weave together two different threads, kind of like a J.J. Abrams movie. I'm going to be talking about this report that I did spend quite a bit of time on the committee for from the National Academies on integrating arts and humanities with science, engineering, and medicine. And I think there's some really, really interesting results and certainly ideas that come out of that report. And of course, I'm also going to talk about some of our work at Drexel University, particularly my center, the Excite Center, that aligns with the themes of that report. So, quick pop quiz. Where is Drexel? How many of you know where Drexel, well, how about this? How many of you know the city where Drexel is located? And it's okay if you don't, that's fine. That's fine. So Drexel is in Philadelphia. We say we're West Philadelphia, born and raised. And if you are too old to get that reference, well, I'm sorry, you're too old or too young to get that reference, rather. We are, a fairly large university, over 22,000 students, 14 colleges and schools. We did transition maybe 20, 30 years ago from a primarily commuter university to one that is primarily on campus. We did recently achieve comprehensive R1 research status, so that was just last year, so we were very proud of that. We are particularly known for our university-wide co-op program, cooperative education, where almost all of our undergraduates go on at least one 6-month full-time experience in industry or at an external organization, interspersed with academic activities. In fact, in some majors, like engineering, our students actually go on 3 work experiences. It's a 5-year program, but they graduate with 18 months of industry experience, and of course, that's a huge advantage for our students in finding employment afterwards. So that's what we're known for. What we're a little bit less known for, but I think is a core piece of our identity, is that Drexel is located in a part of West Philadelphia that has been historically underserved. It's actually designated by the federal government as a promise zone. And those are areas facing persistent challenges due to poverty and low education attainment. And so I will come back to the, well, I mean, it's a thread that will be woven throughout this presentation. Our current president, John Fry, came to us almost 10 years ago exactly now, and gave us this new charge, right? Which he, in his inauguration, he said, my aspiration is for us to be the most civically engaged university in the country, right? And we've spent 10 years trying to figure out what exactly that means. But but more seriously, we have taken that mission, that charge, very, very seriously. Historically, that has not been the mission, particularly for a private institution, right? We do not have a government mandate, a state mandate to serve that role. We are not a land-grant institution. So why should a private institution spend attention, resources, people, right, human resources, in addressing civic engagement? Well, this very simple reason is that we are located in the city of Philadelphia. We are an anchor institution in a dense metropolitan region. As that city goes, so will we, right? And so we have tried over the past 10 years to change the relationship with our neighborhood from an adversarial relationship. And I'll be completely honest, I mean, historically, relations between the neighborhoods and campuses, Drexel and also the University of Pennsylvania, which abuts our campus, had not been good, had not been positive. That's not a good working relationship, and we spent the last 10 years trying to turn that around. And I'll show you a couple of ways in which we're doing that. The center that I direct, we started in 2013. January 2013, and again, I had this enormous privilege as the result of President Fry's first strategic plan, where we identified that one of the big things missing is a non-siloed approach to research and innovation, right? I mean, we're here on a big university campus. I don't have to tell you about silos, right? That there are amazing things happening, I'm sure, and I've seen a lot of them today, in various pockets of the university. Those pockets don't always connect. They don't necessarily know about one another. So we wanted to create an institute, a new center that would serve the entire university. We're a branch of the Office of Research, so I report up to the Executive Vice Provost for Research to create a space, a research institute that would bring researchers at the fringes of their disciplines already into closer proximity. So I've made this joke a couple times today. We call ourselves sometimes the island of misfit toys because I'm an engineer and my faculty appointment's in electrical engineering, but I do music, right? I've had colleagues in fashion design who do wearable technologies, in video games design who do cognitive sciences, material science who are doing work in robotics and in other areas. So bringing together highly interdisciplinary individuals to pursue those sort of interesting collaborative problems. We do have a physical facility. This is the facility. Everything inside that space has moved because that photo's from 6 years ago. But we are on the first floor of a pretty busy thoroughfare in Philadelphia, Market Street. And that's very intentional because those windows are right at street level. We want people to look inside and see, hey, why is there a piano in there? Why are there robots in there? What's going on in there? And that is one way we bring the public closer to what we do. So we are officially our university's Institute for Transdisciplinary Collaboration and Learning. That use of the word transdisciplinary is very intentional, where we imagine training our students to themselves encompass multiple disciplines. It is more than just working with someone from another discipline, but to actually incorporate multiple disciplinary experiences within one person, right? And there are definitions of trans versus multi versus interdisciplinary, and we don't have to go into that, but that's how we're thinking about it. It's more than we just need to work with people in other disciplines. We actually have to sort of infuse those disciplines into our activities. So at the core of all our activities, our research, our outreach, our educational programs, is this notion of STEAM, right? Now, STEAM, again, it's kind of a buzzword. It's an acronym. Of course, it's STEM plus the arts and design. But the way I would differentiate it is that it's not additive, right? Again, it's not just, oh, hey, STEM majors, you should take an arts class, or that arts majors, you should take a math class, right? It is that there's the potential for better learning, more improved outcomes, and of course, greater innovation through the integration of disciplines. And of course, I'll try to give you some examples of that throughout my presentation. It actually kind of refers to the title of my talk, Creativity is Connecting Things, right? That my belief, and again, there's some research to back this up, is that creativity is not a special gift that's endowed upon the select few. It is not getting hit on the head by an apple and inventing calculus, right? It's not necessarily just that those moments of amazing insight and inspiration. Creativity is often exposure to different topics and then seeing those potential connections, right? That seeing something, I mean, here's an example that many people know, that Steve Jobs, right, was exposed to calligraphy, right? The one time he spent a little bit of time in college, was exposed to calligraphy, and of course that informed the typography, the fonts, the design of the graphical user interface that informs everything in computing today, right? So, you might see something in a completely different area, discipline, whether it's the arts or design, or from the sciences or technology, and there might be meaning and might be application in other areas. So, one last thing I'll say about STEAM is that people always ask me, well, what about the things that aren't in STEAM, right? Where's entrepreneurship is not explicitly mentioned in STEAM. Innovation. Reading is not mentioned in STEAM. Why isn't it STREAM or STEAM or humanities or STEAMY or STEAMer or whatever? And then what I tell them, if you have to add letters to STEAM, you don't get it. You're just not getting it, right? It's not meant to be all-encompassing. It's not meant to be literal. A literal interpretation, it should only be these letters. The acronym STEM itself, by the way, a little bit of an aside, right? We know it from the NSF, and the NSF in around 2001 said, hey, we're going to focus on STEM. You know what they called it before STEM? SMET. SMET. In fact, there are still funded projects in the NSF database that if you search for SMET, you will find them. They're still in the database there. And then they tried METS for a couple of years. That didn't work out so well for baseball fans. So finally, they got to STEM. So the only reason I say that, there's no magic to STEM, just like there's no magic to this particular combination. It's a nice mnemonic that kind of can inspire this idea of transdisciplinary learning. Okay, so starting in 2016, I had the great privilege to serve on this committee to produce a National Academies Census report. So the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine said that, hey, we think there are interesting things happening here, particularly in the integration of arts and humanities with science, engineering, and medicine. Great. So we spent 2 years, many meetings, doing a lot of reading, a lot of research. And it's not to commission new research, it's really just a survey of existing research, right? National Academies reports are kind of a snapshot of what's the state of what's out there. Now, if you have seen this, or even if you haven't, maybe you have the same reaction as Master Yoda here, which is that National Academies reports are not necessarily known for being page turners, right? I will try to convince you that, that this report is worth looking at, that there is actually some exciting, there are some exciting insights in this report, and particularly in terms of academic faculty and administrators. I think there's really, it's good to know what's in here, and of course you have a document that's the 4-page highlight version of this. The title of the report itself comes from a quote by Albert Einstein, which, I can't this up here, but that really all religions, arts, and sciences are branches of the same tree. That knowledge, right, is integrated, that we should not be overly prescriptive in sort of, well, siloing or separating these different branches of knowledge, right? And again, so it's a nice quote and sort of encapsulates some of the ideas of our report. Just a quick, a quick commentary on why, what's the relevance of this, right? Why is this important? I'll show a very short video clip from our committee chair, Dr. David Scorton.
The most important thing I can say is that the thorniest problems we have to solve in our society do not fit neatly in any particular curricular or disciplinary category. They're complex problems. They have scientific aspects, they have social aspects, they have human aspects. And so we need to bring from the complete range of human knowledge to bear on trying to solve these problems. And our committee believes that the findings suggest that one way to get there is through integrated curricula.
So he wasn't just our committee, well, he was our committee chair. Of course, he was secretary of the Smithsonian. He recently became president of the American Medical Colleges. I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking on the acronym there. But more importantly, not only is he a trained cardiologist and has a doctorate in engineering, is also a great clarinet player. So David sort of encapsulates all this, this wonderful, having those multidisciplinary perspectives. So when you start on one of these committees, right, you have to, you get 20 plus academics in a room, and then you have to sort of come to some common definitions, right? You have to sort of decide what is, right? So here the operative word was integration. What do we mean by integration? So rather than tell you the whole history of that, I will just say this is a definition that we just settled upon, but research-based, that, it is really the ability to connect, apply, and synthesize information. Really, I think, and it's not stated in this definition, it's this idea that integration is can be greater than the sum of its parts. It is not just additive knowledge, right? It is you're reaching for something more than that. So something greater than the sum of its disciplinary parts. And then we kind of started sorting the information that was out there into different types of integration, different forms of academic integration. Of course, you're very familiar with these here at Florida State because I've seen examples of all of these in the last 2 days. So whether it's in-course integration, right, within a single course, integrating concepts from different fields, different disciplines, sometimes co-taught or team-taught, like that. Co-curricular, extracurricular, integrative opportunities. I've seen a boatload of those. There's some amazing efforts happening here and in other institutions across the country. Within curriculum integration, right, which is adding, integrating courses from multiple disciplines within a single curriculum or program, right? So that's sort of program level integration. And I'll give examples of all of these things. And then my favorite category, but which is not explicitly addressed in the report, is the opportunity of integration through research. Now, it is sort of implicitly addressed in the report because we do talk about graduate education. There's lots of examples that derived from research, right? But we did not do like a survey of all integrative research projects because one, that would have been impossible. There are just too many of them. But two, I don't think we ever agreed that there is any kind of unifying framework around an integrative approach to research, right? That was just a bridge too far for us, for this committee. So let me give a couple of examples of each of these, and of course now some more specific examples of work that I'm pursuing. Before that, I forgot that, what are the reasons to pursue integration to begin with, right? And there is significant literature to support this, right? Well, I guess I'll start with a caveat. There is not the grand longitudinal, thousands of N study that proves that art and humanities integration with science and engineering, math, or medicine is an absolute win, right? I wish we had that study. No one has done that study. No one really knows how to do that study just yet. There are little bits and pieces. So in surveying the literature, yes, we try to grab for those little bits and pieces and try to draw some conclusions from that. So what the literature points to is, of course, things like improved content mastery, dealing with complex concepts and deconstructing that, creative thinking, motivation, engagement, communication skills, team dynamics, right? These are things that, I mean, again, I think we would all agree are positive things, good things, right? And that are, I would say, fairly well supported in the studies that have been done. So in-course integration examples, I mean, these are just some lifted directly from the report. Now, as an aside, another nice outcome of this report is that the National Academies is keeping an online database of these examples of integration, and that's growing. So anybody can contribute. So if you have a course, a program, a co-curricular activity that you want listed there, all you have to do is send an email to the National Academies and it'll be added to their big spreadsheet on this, but that's always accessible. And you know, now there are hundreds of examples in each category. So that is, I think, a positive outcome of that. So, you know, and I just show this to kind of demonstrate some of the breadth of integrations across arts and STEM that are happening out there, particularly in courses. Obviously, every institution is experimenting with new course development, co-teaching, you know, obviously whether that's mandated from the administration or whether that's individual faculty members getting together to create something new. There are examples of all kinds of that. So this is just, you know, one tiny little slice of that. What I have done, this was around the time I started working with the report committee, for our freshman engineering design class, right? These are freshmen who are in the College of Engineering. They have to do a design sequence, 3 terms. We decided to have our freshmen build robotic musical instruments that had to then play together as an ensemble, a robot symphony. And so we did, you know, we showed them some of the basic, you know, not showed them, they really built most of them, designed and built most of them on their own. We showed them some of the basic technologies involved. And then I had students sort of kind of decide on, well, what can we play with this? What kind of pieces? Because we didn't design to say, oh, well, you have to play these notes, you have to play bass notes, you have to play lead notes, you have to be, you know, people kind of came up with their own designs, and then we kind of formed, well, what kind of music can we play around that? So I formed a student team, a sort of a musical director, a stage director, a video director to put all this together. And, you know, these are freshmen, and so we just gave them a lot of rope to try something. And this is some highlights of what they came up with. Show you one other section of this before I move on. This is, so we skipped, this is one of my favorite instruments that one of the students created. This is a floppy drive organ, right? They took old floppy drives and read that, hey, if you tweak the motors in certain ways, you can get them to make notes. So we had this thing go on for about 30 seconds. So a couple of things about it. One, our terms are really short at Drexel. They're only 10 weeks long, right? So this is a 2-term sequence that we had. So I had them in the winter and spring. So this is over the the course of about 20 weeks, which some of that time is highly compressed. Going from really no knowledge, these I mean, sure, some of the freshmen had some prior experience, but a lot of them didn't, and so no knowledge of basic robotics or microcontrollers or anything. And we certainly didn't give them blueprints to say, oh, here's how you build like a floppy drive organ. They were discovering this on their own. The second thing I'd like to point out is that this course idea came from our high school program. we've been running a high school outreach program for 13 years called Summer Music Technology, which uses music to motivate greater interest in science, engineering, and math. So, and one of the project categories we've been developing with high school kids is small self-playing robotic instruments. So we said, well, we know that high school kids can do this in a week. So let's try to have our undergrads do it over the course of a term. Right? And so we've done that one more time since then with a different piece, but very, very similar kinds of results. And again, my goal there is not to create the greatest music performance ever. Right? My goal is to have the students not just fully participate in the experience, but experience also kind of an artistically driven performance deadline, right? That, hey, on the last day of class, we are going to perform this. We're going to invite people. They're going to see your work. We're going to film it, right? And whatever happens, happens, right? So, and again, so the stakes are a little bit higher than just, a class presentation where you can, things can be good or bad. I mean, it's a little bit more than that. And of course, then our twist on this is that, well, each instrument plays an important part. Each team has a role to play. So if you kind of fall down on your section, and I did not show you some of the sections that totally fell down, then, okay, there's going to be 15 seconds where people aren't going to hear stuff, right? That there's just going to be a gap or wrong notes or whatever happens. So, so those are, just one example of an integrated sort of course offering that I would say, sort of encapsulates some STEAM type ideas. Co-curricular examples. There are so many. There are so many, and this is probably the largest category. These are just a few I threw up here. STEAM with Us is a group that's formed across Brown, MIT, RISD, and a couple other schools now where, again, they're trying to pursue joint projects that are STEAM themed. Design, Cultures, and Creativity, that's a great program at University of Maryland that is, well, pretty much what it says is trying to bridge, look at different cultures of creativity. And it's not, I mean, there is an academic track to that, but a lot of their work is outside of the classroom. It's co-curricular as well. Back at the Excite Center, one of our co-curricular highlights, we have three sort of semi-permanent labs that are based at our center. And one of them is our video game design lab, which is called the Entrepreneurial Game Studio. The Entrepreneurial Game Studio, or EGS, is directed by my colleague, Frank Lee, who started the Drexel video game design program. Started that more than 10 years ago, like 15 years ago. But then, as part of his research lab, said that, well, my students are learning to design games, but what they are missing out on is the business side of being a successful video game entrepreneur. That there's much more to having a successful game company than just a good game. So, what he created was an extracurricular program where students apply, and they get quite a few applications a year, or sorry, a term. Every term they get 60 plus applications. There's usually 30 to 40 then who are accepted, and those students then form teams. They form entrepreneurship teams. Usually there are 3 or 4 or 5 students together. They have to form their own LLC. They actually have to go through that process, form a real LLC and organization, and then not just make a great game, which they do, and they've been trained to do that, but then also go through the other processes. How do we get it out there? How do we market it? If we need to raise some money, how do we go about that? Can we just ask for money? Should we, do we do a Kickstarter? If we do a Kickstarter, what are we going to offer for that Kickstarter for those who back us? So this has been now in existence for 5 years, more than 5 years. And there's been some amazing companies that have come out of the EGS. Here's just one example. This is our premier example. This is a game called Soul. And I'm going to play a little bit of the trailer for you. This just launched on Xbox and Steam, the game platform Steam, last fall. And the premise of this game is really cool. That the universe is a universe of darkness, but you are a ball of light. So wherever you go, you're lighting up the world. You're lighting up the universe. And so you're exploring and discovering what's there. I kind of think of it as a Myst for the modern era, right? It is a game about discovery. It's about puzzle solving and sort of, revealing sort of a hidden story that's there. It's not about shooting things. It's not about blowing up things, right? But again, they went through this extensive development process. It's got beautiful music too. The soundtrack, some of the awards, they got nominated for Best Student Game at the Independent Games Festival Awards at the Game Developers Conference. They did have a successful Kickstarter. Some of the students graduated. They needed some money to keep working on the game. They had a successful Kickstarter. And of course, then they finally launched on Xbox and Steam. The soundtrack, the music, which is another student who created the soundtrack, has just been nominated for a big game music award as well. So this is a game you can check out. It's online. The trailers are there as well. And then there are other projects from EGS, the Entrepreneurial Game Studio, that are at various stages of development. So a lot of there are some really, really wonderful game demos that I get to play, and my other students get to play. My son gets to play from time. He's a great play tester for them. But going through that pathway of how do we get our game out there? How do we let people know? And that marketing aspect is not so, especially in the gaming world, that's a rapidly evolving and dynamic target, right? There's not a great course on that, at least certainly not on our campus. So a lot of that is knowledge that's been built through the students that they're sharing and learning. So again, that's on top of their normal classes in game development and design. So that's a co-curricular effort. I'm going to turn now to what I guess is a little bit lacking in the report, which is a focus on research. Because I think that research has so many ways to advance this integration across arts and STEM. And this is work from my research lab, the Music Entertainment Lab, Music Entertainment Technology Lab. And our twist on this, we don't have a college of performing arts. We don't have we have one performing arts major in dance. We do not have a performing arts major in music. We don't have a fine arts major. So our twist on this is that we have then pursued collaborations with arts and cultural organizations in our city. So with various performing arts and creative arts cultural organizations. So one of our first projects was this project called Live Note, which is something we worked on with the Philadelphia Orchestra, one of the major American symphonies. This is in the early days of the iPhone and the iOS software development kit that we said, hey, you know what we want to do? We want to create an app, right? Or really it's a full system that people can follow along an orchestral performance as it's happening at Symphony Hall, Verizon Hall in Philadelphia, and not get completely lost. Right? So part of this is I'm that kind of advisor who would make my students in engineering go to orchestra concerts. Right? I am that kind of advisor. So you have to go, tell me how it is, and then they come back and say, well, that was nice, 90 minutes of nice sounds, but I didn't get it. Right? Because if you don't know that a symphony is organized into 4 movements and that that each movement has like a primary theme, a secondary theme, a development, a recapitulation, it's really easy to get lost. Right? So having just a little bit of a roadmap, we thought would be a really useful tool. So we developed this, our students, this was a senior design project that we developed. We then brought in folks from the orchestra and they were very excited. We got some additional funding from the Knight Foundation to actually fully develop and deploy this. So as far as we know, this is the only such system available at a major American Symphony Orchestra at regular subscription concerts. These aren't special events. These are regular concerts that season ticket holders go to. There was a process certainly about sort of educating the audience, educating their subscribers. Yes, people are going to be using their phones. No, it's not a bad thing, right? Don't get mad. Don't hit your neighbor, whatever. Know that there's actual, and so there was a learning process around that. But now it's been going for 5 years or so where we've been in regular subscription concerts. There's usually about 8 or 9 concert series a year that are Live Note enabled. What was I going to say with that? No, I mean, and now people just take it for granted that it's there, that people are going to be using it, and that's wonderful. Right? So we handed it off to the orchestra. I mean, we built a platform where they not only could audience members use it, we designed it in a particular way to try to be unobtrusive, right? Encourage people, yes, you should turn your sound down. Yes, you should turn the brightness down, that sort of thing. But the content is from the orchestra's education team. And of course, the first thing that they tried to do was take their program notes library and copy it and paste it into the app. And then you quickly realize this is a very, very different form of content, right? That no, you can't read, paragraphs and paragraphs while the thing is happening. You want little, quick bits. And so we try to design a way to encourage that, hey, you get a lot of information in one glance because you're still there to see the Philadelphia Orchestra. You're not there you're constantly reading on your phone. So it's going, it's active, again, and I know that they're trying to make this available to other orchestras as well. So that's a project that we're very happy to help start. We have done some really wonderful collaborations with performing artists, musicians in particular, musicians and composers. This is a clip of our magnetic Resonator piano. It is a grand piano that is augmented with electromagnets. So the electromagnet, of course, the way the piano normally makes sound, hammer hits a string, string vibrates, and that pushes the air around that makes sound. We have electromagnets about a 1/4 inch away from the string. They don't contact the string, but by precisely varying the magnetic field, we can bring those strings to vibration. And it sounds like this. This is a piece by Satie, but it doesn't usually sound like this. This is our friend Mark Carey. Mark is an amazing jazz keyboardist. He's a Grammy-nominated artist. But my favorite thing about this video, this was filmed about 15 minutes after Mark had first sat down at the piano. He hadn't been practicing for hours or days, right? He's just noodling. He is noodling, he's exploring, and the interface is all right there at the keyboard, right? So much new performing arts technology is built and used by one person. The person who made it, right? Because nobody else is going to go through the learning curve it takes to learn an entirely new instrument or a new technology. We felt very deeply we wanted this to be accessible to anyone who has background in piano performance practice, right? It builds upon the traditions and practices of centuries of keyboard skills, keyboard learning. So there are 2 of those in the world. There's one in Philadelphia where it was built by my former postdoc, Andrew McPherson, who now teaches at Queen Mary University of London. So there's a second one there. On that one, he just had this amazing collaboration that is on the Christopher Robin movie soundtrack. So the magnetic resonator piano is on that soundtrack. Composer John Bryan, film composer, loved the sound of it and decided to incorporate it into the soundtrack. We've engaged in collaborations with opera composers as well. This was a piece called Sofia's Forest, where a composer, who was a composer in residence at Opera Philadelphia, Lambert Beecher, envisioned a piece where we have self-playing robotic musical instruments, bike wheels that are percussion instruments, and then self-playing glass harmonicas. So these are the wine glass thing where you wet your finger, but there's a stack of 4 of them, and they play by themselves. So this was, and not only did they produce sound that are part of the orchestra, they're actually on the set. They're part of the stage, right? So we built those instruments. We designed with him and built those instruments, and then staged this in 2017. Unfortunately, I don't have a clip of the performance. I'm not allowed to show that to you, but it was a wonderful, it was really moving work. There is a recording. There is a recording of this performance, that they did after the performance, if anybody's interested. We've had collaborations with other kinds of performing artists as well. So I was approached by David Parsons, who is the artistic director and founder of Parsons Dance, a modern dance company in New York, very successful. It's been around for 30, 40 years almost. And he wanted to do a piece with his dancers and drones on stage simultaneously. And this is sort of what it turned out. Oh. I'm Youngmoo Kim, director. You don't have to listen to me talking because you can listen to me talking. Don't do this. Don't do this. I've done this so you don't have to. Trying to fly drones around people is as crazy as it sounds. Don't do this. So no, I mean, obviously we weren't. I don't think we were being completely insane by doing this. Well, the challenge was to fly drones indoors very precisely. Right? Indoors, you don't have GPS. Right? So we have to build an indoor motion a tracking system, a very, very precise tracking system for drones that we can install on a stage. So we did that. We had 9 performances in Philadelphia at the Prince Theater. No crashes, no injuries. Right? I have used my 9 lives. I'm done. The project definitely took years off my life. Because every single performance, I'm having nearly a heart attack because something could happen. Now these dancers are my heroes. They are fearless. They were agreeable to just about anything, and it is really hard. Those propellers spin really, really fast, and sometimes they're within like 3 feet of a dancer's body, and so it is terrifying. But we did this, and I mean, I wish I had a really profound takeaway from this. One is that, of course, it was a wonderful experience for our students. For our students, particularly those coming from a technology background, engineering and computer science, who had never been on a theater stage before, right? And we had those conversations early on. Well, this is going to be very different. It's a very different environment. This isn't like class project. No, this is like, absolutely has to work 100%. Right? And yet we get on, we're loading the theater, the students get in there and I've never been on a stage before, and they're kind of shell-shocked, starstruck by the situation, right? And then there are vocabulary differences, right? And just in terms of, the performing arts, the theater, the stage manager, all of those things that, we tried to prep for, but you can't prep for anything. So there are these enormous sort of cultural differences that come to light when you try to put together a piece like this. And then the last part is that, sometimes, what was possible. So the ending, the epilogue to this story is that we actually tried to do this performance in New York at, I forget the name of the theater, the Joyce Theater in New York, except that David wanted more drones. He said, 2 drones isn't enough, we need more drones. So here we are, okay, and we've redesigned the system, and we've got more drones going, and we have it in the lab, and we brought the dancers into the lab. We did a big rehearsal. Everything's working. We go to the theater. We install the system, the tracking system, and all that. And no matter what we try, we cannot get the cameras to stay still. That we have to mount them right on lighting rigs and things like that. And in this particular theater, for whatever reason, no matter what we did, they just kept swaying. And you can't have that. You just can't. You can't track. And so we had to cancel those performances on very short notice. So sometimes we go too far, right? And those problems are solvable, but certainly not in less than 24 hours. So another project I'm really, really proud of. I'll show bits of the video, then I'll explain the process. Circle. It's a 12-foot circle of 16 drums. They can produce all sorts of crazy sounds because they're electronically driven. But the coolest part, which I'll talk over, is the process. We have done many projects where we build the technology first, and of course I have some musical background. My students are often musicians as well. We have some musical knowledge. But we'll build technology and then bring a composer, performer in at a later stage of the process. And a lot of times that's great, and they do something really cool with it. And a lot of times they also will say, hey, did you think of this? And we'll be like, no, we didn't. So we thought, well, this is stupid. We should start working with artists from the get-go, right? To do co-design with our artistic partners. So that was this project. Drumhenge is the result of an artist in residence, Peter English, who we selected through a competitive process, and a PhD student in electrical engineering, Jeff Gregorio, who also happens to be a fantastic musician. Not only did we build this and premiered it, and Peter wrote great music for it, because you'll see in a second. The way it's actually, it's not as a solo instrument. We actually have an ensemble that plays inside the circle, and so it augments that. So not only did they build this amazing thing, they had the time and space. We had some funding for this, for them to try a bunch of different things. We went down quite a few blind alleys before arriving at this instrument. So again, you're probably not going to get it right on the first go. So we built a robotic vibraphone player, basically a bunch of solenoids that played a vibraphone, which was cool. Played it really fast. That was about it. So we said, well, that's not quite what we're going for. So we wanted something. The only stipulation was that it needed to be something for live music performance. And so that's one reason I'm incredibly proud of that project. Can't finish without talking about some robots. So we have some robots. We're not afraid to use them. But there's a method to this.
Here come old flat top, he come moving up slowly.
So, in the interest of time, I know you all want to see the video. It's on YouTube. It's got a bunch of hits. So, please add to our hit count or our view count. We have these wonderful robots. We've had a long-standing partnership with KAIST, Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, who design and manufacture these robots. Of course, our lab does interesting music and entertainment technology work. So we said, well, we've got these robots. And so we had them for a relatively short time because the intention of the project was to then share these robots with other research institutions. So to create a common platform, common hardware. So we had them for a short time. We said, okay, what's something crazy we can do in the span of like 6 weeks, right? So we did this music video. We built those custom instruments because you can't go to Guitar Center and buy instruments for robots, at least not yet. So we built a little robotic band and did this in a very, very short period of time, bringing a lot of people together on this crazy adventure. And I'll show you, there's a credit slide here. So all those people who contributed to the project in a very, very short period of time. So that was actually quite an early project. We did that around 2012, 2013. But the reason I bring it up is because then that platform can lead to other kinds of things. One of the things I've spoken to some of you about earlier today is the other core lab at our center was the Center for Functional Fabrics, Smart Fabrics. Right? And the reason I say was is because it's an enormous success story. They've gotten so successful, they no longer fit in our space. So we spun them out. Right? So now they're in a standalone facility, and it's wonderful the work that they do. But there was at least 18 months of robotics research happening, let's say right here, and functional fabrics, smart fabrics work using these industrial digital knitting machines. Right? They're almost like 3D printers for clothes. They're super cool. Happening about right there. So about 20 feet away. 20 feet away. 18 months before somebody said, maybe we could try putting fabric on the robot. And we were like, no, robots don't wear clothes. We don't, well, hold on. Fabric is lightweight. It's flexible. It's really easy to put on and take off. You can use Velcro, all sorts of attachments. One problem we have with these robots is that they're covered with these plastic shells that are incredibly brittle. We break them all the time, and they're a real pain to work with. You have to screw them on, screw them off, to get into the internals of the robot. So we said, yeah, let's put fabric on the robot. Let's put fabric on the robot. And so we've done that. We've put fabric on the robot to initially better protect the robot and make it easier to work with. But we didn't stop there, right? Because yes, we did. We lightened the weight of the robot. We better protected it, and it made it much easier to work with. But we didn't stop there because we discovered, well, not discovered, but just trying stuff, we could add touch sensors right under the fabric. Initially, conductive patches that we literally sewed right onto the fabric, but then later on, fully integrating that touch sensing into the fabric itself using conductive fibers. So this is a very simple demonstration, but that sleeve is embedded with those touch sensors. So as he touches it, the robot is moving away. He's not pushing down. He's not pushing. It's just sensing his touch, and then the robot is moving its arm away. So you know what's missing on most robots out there is any kind of touch sensitivity. And so if we're going to have robots as assistive devices around the house, you need to be able to tap your robot on the shoulder to get its attention. And right now, any robot out there, you tap on the shoulder, it has no idea. It's oblivious. So this is a really sort of cost-effective way of doing that. But even more, and I don't have this video queued up, but it doesn't need to be on a robot. There's all sorts of uses for fabric touch sensing, right? So the point is that we didn't set out to build a fabric touch sensor. We decided we were trying to, make it easier to work with the robot. And one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to something that, I would say is truly innovative, right? Fabric touch sensing. This is fabric that you can put through the washing machine, right? It's been through the washing machine 10 times and it still has touch sensitivity. So some really, really awesome things that can happen. A lot of this, in particularly research, is captured Academy of Sciences that talks a lot about these sort of research integrations from researchers all across the country. So there is a full issue there. I'll encourage you to check that out. Last couple things. I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to try to wedge a few more things in here. The last category I didn't address from the report is this within curriculum example of integration. And of course, there are many. There are programs that are starting that are designed to be transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. We have started one. We have this new program called Transcend, Transdisciplinary Science, Computing, and Engineering Design. It is a master's degree. Simply, we call it a master's in making. So the program is official. It's been added to the university catalog. We're recruiting right now. We hope to enroll students next fall. It is a full-time Master of Science program, so a 2-year program. But being a co-op school, it has an industry co-op built in. So these are master's students who will then go out for 6 months, go back to industry or into industry for 6 months, then come back, complete their master's thesis. That's sort of the one extra twist we're putting on it. I probably don't need this slide because I'm sure you're all aware that when you're trying to pursue transdisciplinary integrative activities on a university campus, things will come up. There will be people who say, you can't do that, that's not how it works, all of those things. There are financial impediments, accounting impediments. Of course, those, I'm not going to dwell on these. They are certainly talked about in some detail in the report. So really, we see this report as a tool. A snapshot of what's happening out there, but for those who are advocating for greater integration, more transdisciplinary, certainly arts and humanities with science, engineering, and medicine integrations, there are some key recommendations and hopefully a tool that you can use as you are pursuing these initiatives or trying to, of course, find additional resources, find support from senior administrators, all of that. That, look, there are people doing it. Here are some examples. That doesn't mean that's the way we need to do it, but here are some guidelines. Right? Rather than going through all of these, and again, I'm almost out of time, I really want to focus on this last one because I haven't touched upon it yet, which is, and this is in the report, but certainly something that I strongly believe in, that these sort of integrative efforts, particularly spanning the arts and the sciences, can, not necessarily will, but can enhance inclusivity. And that as we design these efforts, it is an opportunity. It is an enormous opportunity as we're redesigning courses, programs, co-curricular activities to design them with equity in mind, first and foremost. Right. So we've done some research in this area. Many others have as well. People have looked at this have pointed to this many times. Right, here are all the covers ever in the history of Make magazine. Right, Make magazine, which is sort of the Bible for the maker movement. Right, in 2015, Leah Beakley did a study where she pointed out that in terms of female representation on covers, they were far, far underrepresented. Right, there were only I think up to 2015 or so, which is about midway there, about 2 women had been on the covers, and about 15, 20 men or so. I use this slide to point out that in the entire publication history of Make magazine, no African American has ever been on the cover of Make magazine, ever, and never will be because Make magazine doesn't publish anymore. They're done, right? So I use this to highlight the fact that, new programs, new movements, particularly maker learning, which has so much attention, so much and so much support, whether it's in higher ed or K-12, right, comes with some baggage, right? That it's coming from the tech industry. A lot of it's coming from the tech industry. And we have, in our research and the research of many others, shows that there are implicit biases carried from that. Now, a lot of teachers, maker instructors in K-12 almost all of them are wonderful people, right? A lot of them are coming back from industry, giving freely of their time. We did a study where we visited 30 K-12 education makerspaces around the country. Sent a team out and did ethnographic research at each site. We did a lot of interviews. We coded those interviews. One of the really profound things we found was that instructors often predominantly referred to their male students as coders, hackers, geeks, nerds, in positive ways, and predominantly refer to their female students as girls. Right? And it's not even close. It wasn't like, oh, it's sort of a little bit of this. No. It was like this. So, there's more details in this report. So we published this report called Making Culture, which includes that result and other examples of implicit biases. Again, the problem with implicit bias is when you deny that it exists, right? So we have, oh gosh, I'm not going to have time to cover this. We have built programs at our center, based at our center, that engage our community, engage the youth in West Philadelphia in maker activities, but that start with cultural representation, that start with the things that resonate with the youth in our community, things like sneaker design, which is such an important part of youth culture. We, again, at our music technology programs, right, we have redesigned and rebuilt with from a culturally inclusive standpoint. We have this wonderful program that Malcolm Jenkins, who is a player for the Philadelphia Eagles, helped us start. His foundation helped us start. If you don't know Malcolm, he's an incredible advocate on so many issues, including education and social justice. So we've started this 6-week middle school program, STEAM middle school program for residents in the Promise Zone, that area around Drexel, and it's, of course, free to all neighborhood residents. I'll skip the highlight video for that. And then, because that Center for Functional Fabrics, as I just told you, has spun out of our space and is now being very successful in their own space, we have started a new laboratory in that space with my colleagues Kareem Edward and Chris Wright, who are from our School of Education, but who research emerging learning technologies, especially in urban communities. So they have called it the ILLIST Lab, the Informal Learning, Linking Engineering, Science, and Technology. So they just started this past fall, but we are bringing in students from our neighborhoods, particularly from West Philly High, to learn not only about making, to learn maker skills, but to actually help us redesign the space, to be as inclusive as possible, to reflect our students in our community. So that is a new effort, but it's ongoing. We'll be talking about this at South by Southwest EDU in just a couple of weeks. So that's on March 9th. If you happen to be there, come check it out. Really, lastly, I know I'm over time right now, but let me close with one final thought. Because I really believe that all this stuff connects. I believe that transdisciplinary collaboration, arts STEM collaborations, have profound relevance for not only innovation, but also for equity, also for inclusion. Right? I believe that incorporating the arts and creativity in science, in technology, naturally broadens participation because you are including more perspectives, you are including more interests, you are including more students. So many approach innovation with these three as aspirational role models. And in fact, the success of Microsoft and Apple and Facebook is often used to justify investments in STEM, right? But I would also strongly argue that today's tech industry is not the only model for innovation and should not be our only model for innovation. And if we do so, then we really, really limit our opportunities for the future. One needs only to look at participation in the tech industry At least they've been producing diversity reports, Google, Apple, Facebook, every year. And if you look at them, you will find that the numbers of women in technology, and certainly the numbers of African Americans, Latinx, and other underrepresented minorities are abysmal in the tech industry. But it doesn't start there. It starts in our undergrad and graduate programs too, that in our majors, in computer science and electrical engineering, in technology-related majors. Right? I haven't checked the stats for FSU, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But I know certainly at our institution, they are abysmal. We should be embarrassed by that. So actually, these three actually reminded me of another three. Right? The classical giants of Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven. And now, I was a music major, so I love Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven. But no one would argue today that these are the most relevant musical influences in music, in the music industry today. Right? So our culture has certainly evolved from that point to include music of different genres, ethnicities, traditions, jazz, rock, Latin, hip hop, right? And I'm not saying that the music industry today has achieved equity by no means. Many, many issues, but I'd argue that it is still far more inclusive than today's technology industry. So perhaps this will help you. Don't think of these three as aspirational models, but really as equivalent to those classical giants of old. And that building courses, programs, curricula in their image and training and asking our students to be like them is about as absurd as asking them to be like this. So I believe that STEAM and more generally this sort of integrative approach enables that breadth of participation needed to meet some of the world's greatest challenges. If you want to read more, you can get the reports online. There's also a great website, nas.edu/branches, which has videos and blog posts around this, including the link to those integrative resources. Thank you very much. And I apologize for going over time.
I've got a microphone if there are questions.
Yeah. I'm happy to take some questions. I'm happy to stick around as well.
When it came to the Excite program, you were at like your startup level. What were the challenges, and how did you like fully integrate the community surrounding Drexel into your decisions and creation?
Sure. How long have you got? Challenges, there are certainly many. I mean, anytime you're starting something new, especially when it's something with a funny name that people don't understand, right? It doesn't fit within an existing box within an institution. That is challenging. Again, all credit to our senior administration, my president, my vice provost for research, who helped us begin that process and said, no, this is important. This is something we're going to do. So that helped a lot. I guess some of the initial challenges were around, how do we, what kinds of participation are we looking for, and how do we enable that? Right? Ours is a research institute, so there are going to be faculty labs there, and they're going to have a lot of control over their research activities, as faculty do. How do we get, they're going to bring some students along as well. How do we build a community around that? And the short answer is that, well, it takes time. You have to build trust over that. But you also have to offer something unique, something better than maybe what they're getting in their current location or their current department and all that. So I think after, I can't point to an exact time, but maybe about 3 years in is where the three labs there had kind of found their footing, had built up this level of trust, and we're starting to see greater forms of collaboration. Much less of, hey, that thing is ours, don't touch that thing, right? And much more of, oh, what are you working on, right? What's this cool thing, and maybe that thing might help our problem as well. And that's an ongoing process. And of course, with a new lab just starting this fall, we're starting that process over again with that lab. I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
But like, what were like the first like steps you had to like achieving your goal?
That is a really good question. So we didn't just envision the center, right, and snap our fingers and say, all of a sudden there's a center, right? This was a long process. So it started with a university strategic plan, which if you've ever been to university strategic planning meetings, they're a hoot. right? But no, you have to actually say the same thing, to start to get it to sink in. You have to say it and keep saying it and keep saying it. Hopefully not in an antagonizing way, but in a way that you're starting to get people to really understand what's new about this initiative. So I think starting with the strategic planning process, another thing we did is that we started applying for big grants, right? We didn't get many of them, but that process of actually, bringing people together, different faculty from different departments, and starting to have to work together on a document that says, hey, this is what we want to do. That certainly was an important step in the building process. And then lastly, I'll say that once there was sort of a green light to go, things happened really fast. I was telling some people this morning, from the time we said, okay, we're going to go with the center. Oh, and here's a space you can use. Oh, and you're going to meet with the architects basically tomorrow. From that point, it was a go to the time we opened was about 5 months. Right, which was, and I said this morning, I'll say again, I would take back some of the decisions I made in those 5 months. I wish I could take some of them back, but it was an incredibly fast process once the space was secured and we had to start the renovations, and there were probably some things I would do differently now, but we're working on that. Yeah.
And how did you get started with community engagement?
Oh, yeah, so I have a whole nother presentation that I won't give right now, don't worry, on sort of the civic engagement initiatives at Drexel. So this is not at all just me. This is a bunch of people. How it started is that our Office of University Community Partnerships was created also through that first strategic plan, and brought in my colleague Lucy Kerman to be Senior Vice Provost for University Community Partnerships. The big milestone there is that we opened 2014 and 2015, a community center in West Philadelphia that's called the Dornsife Center. And the Dornsife Center for Community Partnerships, for neighborhood partnerships, about 5 blocks off our campus. It's in the middle of the neighborhoods of Powelton Village and Mantua, so right sort of in the center of the Promise Zone. It is staffed by university personnel, but offers services to the neighborhood like financial counseling, legal assistance, digital literacy courses, there's a dance class, there's health and wellness courses. So that was a major investment on part of the university, and that sort of was added some proof to the rhetoric. We said we want to be your partners, we want to work together with the neighborhood, and then okay, now here's a real space to do it, right? So I think that helped our civic engagement efforts profoundly. So our summer camp, for example, is based at that center, right? That's the meeting point. We don't do all the activities there, but it's based there. That's where we meet. That's where we have lunch, that sort of thing. It's an ongoing process. I mean, we're 10 years into John Frye's presidency, and there are a few faculty, myself and others, who are heavily engaged in efforts in West Philly. There are obviously many, many more who not only are not engaged, are probably not even aware of what's happening there, and that there are opportunities for community partnered research, for all kinds of truly partnered research practitioner partnerships. But we have to be very, very careful because historically, right, the research relationship between Drexel and the community has been, hey, I'm going to show up to your classroom and here's a bunch of surveys. I'm going to drop them off and I'll come back in 2 weeks and pick them up and then, oh, thank you very much and see you, right? So one of the greatest stories I heard from my colleague Lucy recently, we formed a joint university committee, not just us, but also with representatives from University of Pennsylvania and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, so the major other research institutions in the area, with representatives from the neighborhood. And this was the Community Research Steering Committee, right? Because they're constantly getting asks and that sort of thing. So after the first couple of meetings of this new committee, the neighborhood residents kicked off the other members for a while. Not in a super mean way, but just said, no. You guys are talking about all these, IRB, you're talking about financial distribution, you're talking about all these things that look, we don't care about. So go away for a while, let us figure out what are our needs, right? What are our priorities? And then about 2 months later, they invited them back, right? And so hopefully, I'm not saying it's a huge win, but I think it is a more productive conversation that is happening there. So, but yeah, no, it's a constantly evolving set of initiatives, right? But I for one, I believe that, you can't build a wall around your institution, right? We call that Columbia, but no, sorry. Anyone from Columbia here? No, we're a part of this city. Drexel, it's been around since 1891 as part of the city. And, where Philadelphia goes, that's where we have to go. And so we're going to build that future together, right? And so, there's a whole nother talk about the state of higher education and the future of higher education. We believe that it needs to be more experiential, that it needs to be civically engaged, it has to be more meaningful, right? And so what better way to do that with with the neighborhood we're in, right, as partners. But I would be the first to admit we don't get it right, 100% of the time. Maybe we don't even get it right 50% of the time, right? But we have to keep trying at these efforts.
We're over time, so this is probably a great place to stop. Please join me in thanking Dr. Youngmoo Kim for such an invigorating and exciting talk, which gave us many things to think about here at FSA. Thank you, Youngmoo.
Thanks for inviting me.
for being here with us. I'm sure Youngmoo is going to hang out around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. Thank you all again.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.